The relentless Virginia rain hammered against the sleek, dark charcoal windshield of the Audi, blurring the glowing red taillights of the scarce midnight traffic ahead. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere was dead silent, save for the rhythmic, muffled thumping of the wipers and the faint hum of the heated leather seats. Major General Serena Hale was a woman who had mastered the art of silence. It was a stark, necessary contrast to the deafening chaos that usually defined her life. For the past several hours, she had been buried deep within the labyrinthine corridors of the Pentagon. As the Deputy Director of Global Logistics for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, her day had been a grueling marathon of high-stakes briefings, classified budget allocations, and tense debates over the deployment of missile defense systems across the Pacific Theater. She was exhausted, a deep, bone-weary exhaustion that came not just from age, but from carrying the weight of thousands of American soldiers' lives on her shoulders. Serena rolled her neck, feeling the satisfying pop of tension releasing from her vertebrae. She had swapped her formal Class A uniform, heavy with 2 silver stars and rows of commendations, including a Bronze Star from her second tour in Operation Enduring Freedom, for a tailored, understated civilian navy blazer and crisp white blouse before leaving her office in Arlington. She just wanted to get to her home in a quiet upscale neighborhood in Oak Haven County, pour herself a neat glass of Macallan, and sleep. Route 1 was slick with oil and rain, reflecting the harsh amber glow of the streetlights. Serena drove with the precision of someone who had navigated armored convoys through the treacherous mountain passes of the Korengal Valley. She was exactly under the speed limit, her hands resting at the 10-2 position. She was not in a rush. She had survived ambushes, political backstabbing in Washington, and the inherent unspoken friction of being a black woman rising to the top echelon of a predominantly white, male-dominated institution. Patience was her greatest weapon. Then the sudden, blinding flash of red and blue LED lights shattered the darkness of her rearview mirror. Serena blinked, the harsh strobe lights momentarily disorienting her. A heavy, modified Ford Explorer Police Interceptor was riding uncomfortably close to her rear bumper. She glanced at her digital speedometer. She was maintaining her lane. Her registration was pristine. Her taillights were fully functional. There was no erratic movement. A quiet sigh escaped her lips. Standard traffic stop, she thought. Maybe a broken license plate light she had not noticed. She did not panic. Panic was an emotion she had discarded decades ago at West Point. With smooth, deliberate movements, Serena activated her right turn signal, smoothly navigated the Audi into a well-lit parking lot of a closed strip mall, and brought the vehicle to a complete gentle stop. She shifted into park, turned off the engine, and pressed the button to roll down her driver's side window. The cold, damp Virginia air rushed in, carrying the smell of wet pavement and exhaust. Following the protocol she had drilled into her own soldiers, she placed both of her hands squarely on the top of the steering wheel, fingers splayed and clearly visible. In the side mirror, she watched the door of the patrol cruiser swing open. A figure stepped out into the rain. Officer Bryce Harlan was a man whose ego entered a room long before he did. He was built with the thick, rigid posture of a man who spent too much time in the gym and too little time reading the procedural manual. He had a reputation in the Oak Haven County precinct, one of aggressive stops, escalating minor infractions, and a barely concealed bias that his commanding officers frequently swept under the rug due to his high quota of arrests. Tonight, Harlan was bored, irritable, and looking for a target. When he saw the pristine Audi cruising down Route 1, driven by a black woman, a toxic narrative instantly wrote itself in his mind. Stolen vehicle, he had thought, or bought with illicit money. It was a prejudice so deeply ingrained in him that he did not even question its validity. He just acted on it. Harlan approached the vehicle slowly, his heavy boots crunching against the gravel. He kept his right hand resting intentionally on the grip of his Glock, an intimidation tactic, a silent threat meant to establish immediate dominance. He stopped just behind the B-pillar of the Audi, positioning himself in Serena's blind spot, forcing her to turn her head awkwardly to see him. The rain dripped from the brim of his campaign hat as he shined his heavy, high-lumen tactical flashlight directly into Serena's face, blinding her. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Harlan's voice was sharp, loud, and entirely devoid of professional courtesy. It was not a question. It was a challenge. Serena squinted against the blinding beam, her hands remaining perfectly still on the wheel. I have no idea, officer. I was under the speed limit and maintaining my lane. I will be the judge of that, Harlan sneered, lowering the flashlight just enough so the beam hit her chest instead of her eyes. He leaned in slightly, his eyes scanning the luxurious leather interior of the car with undisguised suspicion. Whose car is this? The question hung in the damp air. It was a loaded question dripping with an assumption that made Serena's jaw tighten, but she maintained her composure. Her voice was level, projecting the unmistakable timbre of a woman accustomed to giving orders that were instantly obeyed. It is my vehicle, officer. Harlan let out a short, mocking scoff. Right. License, registration, and proof of insurance now, and keep your hands where I can see them while you get them. My wallet is in my purse on the passenger seat, and the registration is in the glove compartment, Serena stated clearly, telegraphing her movements exactly as she would in a hostile environment to avoid friendly fire. I'm going to reach for them now. Make it quick and no sudden moves, Harlan snapped, taking half a step back, his hand gripping his holster tighter. The quiet drive home was over. The battle lines had just been drawn, and Officer Bryce Harlan had no earthly idea who he was going to war against. Serena reached slowly across the console. She retrieved her slim leather wallet from her purse and extracted two items, her Virginia driver's license and her United States Armed Forces Common Access Card, the green-striped military ID that denoted her rank as an active duty Major General. She always provided both during official encounters. It was a matter of protocol and transparency. She turned back to the window, extending the cards into the cold rain alongside her registration and insurance slip. Officer Harlan snatched the documents from her hand with unnecessary force. He did not even look at the military ID at first. He held up the driver's license, shining his flashlight on it, then down at her face, then back to the license. Serena Hale, he read aloud, his tone thick with condescension. You have a long way to drive, Serena. What are you doing in this neighborhood? Serena's dark eyes locked onto his. The disrespect was palpable. He had deliberately dropped her title, and now he was questioning her right to exist in an affluent zip code. I'm driving to my home, officer, which is less than 5 miles from here. Harlan scoffed again, looking at the registration. Address matches, sure. Must be nice driving an Audi like this. What do you do for a living, Serena? You do not look like a CEO. Officer, Serena said, her voice dropping an octave, slipping seamlessly into the authoritative command voice she used to silence boardrooms of 4-star generals and defense contractors. I have provided my documentation. Am I being cited for a traffic violation, or am I free to go? Harlan's face flushed red in the glow of his flashlight. He hated being challenged, especially by someone he had already deemed beneath him. He finally shifted his gaze to the second card in his hand, the military ID. He stared at it. He saw the rank Major General. He saw her photo. He saw the Department of Defense seal, but Bryce Harlan's prejudice was a thick, blinding fog. To him, this black woman in a civilian blazer could not possibly be a 2-star general in the United States Army. It did not fit his narrow, bigoted worldview. Therefore, in his mind, the ID was a fabrication. What is this? Harlan demanded, flicking the heavy plastic CAC card with his thumb. That is my Department of Defense identification card, Serena replied evenly. I'm a Major General in the United States Army. Harlan let out a loud, ugly laugh. It echoed in the quiet, rainy parking lot. A Major General? Really? You expect me to believe that? You probably bought this fake piece of plastic online to try and get out of speeding tickets. With a flick of his wrist, Harlan tossed the military ID back through the window. It hit the Audi's center console, bounced, and fell out into the wet street, landing in a puddle near his boots. Serena's entire demeanor shifted. The patience evaporated, replaced by a cold, calculating fury. Disrespecting her was one thing. Disrespecting the uniform, the rank she had bled for, the institution she gave her life to, was an entirely different offense. Pick that up, Serena commanded. It was not a request, it was an order delivered with the absolute certainty of compliance. Harlan stopped laughing, his eyes narrowed, his ego bruising instantly under the weight of her tone. Excuse me? Are you giving me orders? I am telling you that you just discarded official federal government property on the ground, Serena said, her eyes burning into his. I strongly suggest you pick it up, process my license, and let me go before you make a mistake you cannot afford to fix. Listen to me, lady. Harlan leaned in, his face inches from the window, his breath smelling faintly of stale coffee and chewing tobacco. You do not tell me what to do. I am the law out here. I think you are driving a stolen vehicle. I think your ID is a forgery, and I think you are resisting a lawful investigation. You have run my plates. The car is registered to me, Serena fired back, her logic flawless, cutting through his bravado like a hot knife. You have my valid driver's license. If you suspect the military ID is fake, run the DOD number through your dispatch. But you will not do that, will you? Because you know exactly what you are doing right now. Step out of the vehicle, Harlan ordered suddenly, his hand now unfastening the retention strap on his holster. Serena did not move. For what reason, officer? What is your probable cause to order me out of my vehicle? Because I told you to. Step out of the car now, or I will drag you out through this window, Harlan shouted, his hand dropping to the door handle, yanking it hard. The doors were locked. Officer, I am perfectly willing to cooperate with a lawful order, Serena maintained her composure, though her heart rate had slightly elevated. She was mapping out the geometry of the situation. He was armed, agitated, and irrational, but she needed him to state his probable cause. I need you to state your probable cause. You are escalating a routine stop into an unlawful detention. I am giving you 3 seconds, Harlan roared, pulling his baton from his belt with his left hand, leaving his right near his gun. 1. Serena realized the situation had crossed the point of no return. This man was not listening to reason. He was looking for violence. If she stayed in the car, he would smash the window and glass could blind her. If she stepped out, she was at his physical mercy. She chose the tactical advantage of open space. I am unlocking the door, Serena said loudly and clearly. I am stepping out of the vehicle. My hands are empty. She pressed the unlock button and slowly pushed the heavy door open, stepping out into the pouring rain. The cold water instantly soaked through her blazer. She stood tall, drawing herself up to her full height. Even in civilian clothes, her posture was impeccable, back straight, shoulders squared, chin elevated. She looked exactly like what she was, a commander. But Bryce Harlan only saw a threat to his authority the moment Serena's sensible leather heels touched the wet asphalt. Officer Harlan lunged. He did not give her a chance to stand completely still. He grabbed her left arm, his thick fingers digging violently into her bicep through the wet fabric of her blazer. He twisted her arm behind her back with excessive punishing force, attempting to drive her face first into the side of her own vehicle. Stop resisting! Harlan screamed, a standard-issue phrase yelled, not for her benefit, but for the dash cam, recording the interaction from his cruiser. Serena had not resisted. She had not even flinched. But when he wrenched her shoulder dangerously close to the point of dislocation, her decades of close-quarters combat training kicked in instinctively. Instead of fighting his momentum, Serena stepped into the twist, rolling her shoulder to alleviate the pressure, and planted her feet in a solid, unmovable stance. She did not strike him. That would be a felony, and she knew the optics, but she stopped his assault cold. Harlan grunted, surprised by the sheer physical stability of the woman. It was like trying to push over an oak tree. I am not resisting, officer, Serena said, her voice loud, clear, and projected so that the microphone on his body camera would catch every single syllable. You are applying excessive and unlawful force. You are assaulting a commanding officer of the United States Armed Forces. Let go of my arm. Shut up! Harlan grunted, frustrated that he could not easily overpower her. He unclipped his handcuffs and roughly grabbed her right wrist, yanking it behind her back to meet the left. The cold steel of the cuffs bit hard into her wrists. He ratcheted them down tight, too tight. It was a common, petty cruelty meant to inflict pain without leaving immediate, massive bruises. Serena felt the immediate loss of circulation in her fingers, but her face remained an emotionless mask. She would not give this man the satisfaction of seeing her in pain. You are under arrest, Harlan panted, stepping back to admire his work. On what charge? Serena demanded, turning her head to look him dead in the eye. Resisting arrest, failure to obey a lawful order, and producing fraudulent government identification, Harlan rattled off, a smug, triumphant smile creeping onto his face. He felt powerful. He had subdued the wealthy, arrogant woman. He had won. "You are making a catastrophic mistake," Serena said quietly. It was not a threat of physical violence, it was a statement of absolute, undeniable fact. "When my command finds out about this, your badge will be the least of the things you lose." "Save it for the judge, General," Harlan mocked, grabbing her by the back of her collar and shoving her toward the back of his police cruiser. As he pushed her through the rain, Serena's eyes caught movement across the street. The flashing police lights were illuminating the awning of a late-night diner. Standing under the awning was a young man wearing a hoodie, holding up his smartphone. The camera lens was pointed directly at them. He was recording the entire interaction. Serena held her head high as Harlan forcefully shoved her into the hard plastic back seat of the Ford Explorer. The doors slammed shut, enclosing her in the cage. It smelled of cheap cleaner and old sweat. Outside, she watched through the rain-streaked window as Harlan walked back to her Audi. She watched him kick her military ID, which was still lying in the puddle under the tire of her car. He then casually reached into her vehicle, grabbed her purse, and tossed it into the passenger seat of his cruiser before getting behind the wheel. Harlan looked in the rearview mirror at his prisoner. He expected to see her crying or panicked or begging to be let go. Instead, Major General Serena Hale was sitting perfectly straight in the back seat, her eyes locked onto his reflection in the mirror. There was no fear in her eyes. There was only a cold, calculating promise of retribution. Harlan's stomach gave a sudden, uncomfortable lurch, a primal instinct warning him that he had just stepped on a landmine, but he quickly suppressed it, turning the key and throwing the cruiser into drive. She is a nobody, he told himself. Just a nobody with a fake badge. As the police cruiser pulled out onto Route 1 to carrying the general toward the Oak Haven County holding cells, Serena closed her eyes and began to mentally draft the single phone call she was legally entitled to make. She was not going to call a lawyer. She was not going to call her husband. She was going to call the Pentagon. And she was going to bring down hell. The Oak Haven County Police Department was a relic of the late 1980s, a brutalist, concrete structure that smelled perpetually of ammonia, stale donuts, and unwashed bodies. Inside the booking area, harsh fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting an unnatural, sickly pallor on everyone beneath them. Officer Bryce Harlan pushed Major General Serena Hale through the heavy metal double doors with a sharp, unnecessary shove between her shoulder blades. Serena stumbled forward half a step, but immediately caught her balance, her posture snapping back to rigid perfection. Her blazer was soaked through, clinging uncomfortably to her crisp white blouse, and her wrists throbbed with a dull rhythmic ache from the over-tightened steel cuffs. "Look what the rain washed in," Harlan announced loudly, his voice echoing off the cinder block walls. Several officers working at computer terminals looked up. A few smirked, others simply looked away, accustomed to Harlan's late-night theatrics. Behind the elevated booking desk sat Desk Sergeant Harlan Voss, a veteran with a graying mustache and a waistline that strained against his uniform belt. He barely glanced up from his monitor as Harlan marched Serena to the processing counter. "What do we have?" Voss grumbled, taking a slow sip from a massive styrofoam cup of coffee. "Resisting arrest, failure to obey, and a suspected stolen vehicle," Harlan rattled off, slamming Serena's leather purse onto the high counter. "Oh, and identity fraud. Caught her trying to pass off a fake military ID, claimed she was a major general." A smattering of chuckles broke out across the bullpen. Sergeant Voss finally looked up, his eyes landing on Serena. For a split second, the veteran cop's instinct flared. The woman standing before him in handcuffs did not look like a car thief or an identity fraudster. Despite her soaked clothes, there was a regal, undeniable air of authority radiating from her. Her face was completely impassive, her dark eyes locked onto Voss with an intense, unblinking focus that made him profoundly uncomfortable. "Name?" Voss asked, his fingers hovering over his keyboard. "I am Major General Serena Hale, United States Army," she stated, her voice slicing through the ambient noise of the precinct like a scalpel. "I have been unlawfully detained, physically assaulted, and denied my basic constitutional rights by this officer. I am asserting my right to a telephone call immediately." Harlan snorted, grabbing her forcefully by the bicep again. "She is delusional, Sarge, total head case. She would not even step out of the car when ordered. Process her." Voss sighed, rubbing his temples. He did not want the paperwork, and he certainly did not want to deal with a combative suspect who spoke with such terrifying articulation. Empty your pockets, lady. Take off any jewelry, the blazer, and the belt. Harlan forcibly turned Serena around to remove the handcuffs. When the steel teeth finally clicked open, Serena did not rub her wrists, though deep, angry purple indents had been carved into her skin, accompanied by friction burns that were already beginning to swell. She silently memorized Harlan's badge number and Voss's badge number. With deliberate measured movements, Serena removed her wet navy blazer, folding it perfectly over her arm before placing it on the counter. She unbuckled her belt and set it down. She slid off her simple gold wedding band and her West Point class ring. Placing them neatly in the plastic property bin, Voss slid across the desk. Turn around, Harlan ordered, holding a digital camera. He snapped her mugshot front and side profiles. In both photos, Serena's expression was the same, a cold, unwavering stare of absolute resolve. Get her printed, Voss instructed, gesturing to the live scan fingerprinting machine in the corner. Then put her in cell 3. As Harlan led her toward the fingerprint scanner, Serena stopped. She planted her feet and turned her head toward the desk sergeant. Sergeant Voss, Serena said, her voice dropping to a dangerously calm octave. Under the laws of the Commonwealth of Virginia, I'm entitled to make a telephone call upon being booked into a holding facility. You have taken my property. I require the use of a phone now. Voss frowned, annoyed. You will get your call when processing is done. Get your fingers on the glass. You are currently an accessory to the false imprisonment of a flag officer of the United States Armed Forces, Serena replied, her eyes burning into his. Every second you delay my ability to contact my command, you are destroying your own career. The phone now. Something in her tone, the sheer terrifying lack of panic, made Voss hesitate. He looked at Harlan, then back at Serena. Let her make the call, Harlan. Just get it over with so she will shut up. Harlan rolled his eyes, shoving her toward a grimy stainless steel payphone bolted to the wall near the holding cells. Make it quick, General, he mocked, air-quoting her title. Your imaginary troops are probably missing you. Serena picked up the heavy receiver. She did not dial a local attorney. She did not dial a bail bondsman. Her fingers flew across the metallic keypad, dialing a highly classified 24-hour unlisted number. The phone rang exactly twice before a voice answered. It was not an automated menu, and it was not a receptionist. National Military Command Center, Watch Officer, a crisp, hyper-alert voice answered. This is Major General Serena Hale, Deputy Director of Global Logistics Joint Chiefs of Staff, Serena said, her voice dropping into a rapid, clipped military cadence completely foreign to the officers eavesdropping behind her. Authentication, Romeo Tango, Echo 907. There was a 2-second pause as the watch officer at the Pentagon cross-referenced the daily authentication cipher. Authentication verified. General Hale? This is Captain Reynolds. Go ahead, ma'am. Captain, I need to be patched through to the home residence of my Chief of Staff, Colonel Desmond Langford, immediately. Priority override. If he is asleep, wake him right away. General, stand by. The line clicked. A faint static hum filled Serena's ear. Behind her, Harlan was leaning against a desk, grinning at another officer, completely oblivious to the sheer scale of the machine Serena was currently activating. At a home in Alexandria, Virginia, Colonel Desmond Langford jerked awake as the secure red phone on his nightstand began to blare. A decorated combat veteran in Serena's fiercely loyal right hand, Langford grabbed the receiver on the second ring. Langford. Desmond, it is Serena. Langford sat up instantly, throwing off his blankets. The tone of her voice was one he had not heard since their deployment in Afghanistan, when their forward operating base came under heavy mortar fire. It was the voice of a commander in a hostile environment. General, what is your status? I am currently being unlawfully detained in a holding cell at the Oak Haven County Police Department precinct, Serena stated calmly, though every word was a precision strike. I was subjected to an unlawful traffic stop, assaulted and arrested by Officer Bryce Harlan, badge number 744. He confiscated my DOD identification, deemed it fraudulent, and discarded it at the scene on Route 1, approximately 3 miles north of the precinct. Silence hung on the line for exactly 3 seconds as Colonel Langford processed the magnitude of what he was hearing. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly, vibrating with barely contained rage. Assaulted? handcuffed with excessive force, minor soft tissue damage to the wrists. I am physically operational, but the situation is severely compromised. General, Langford said, his voice tightening, consider the cavalry mobilized. I am waking up the Provost Marshal General and contacting the Department of the Army Criminal Investigation Division immediately. I will also have JAG attach a senior federal prosecutor to the strike team. We are going to rip that precinct down to the foundation. Do not send a local lawyer, Desmond, Serena commanded. I want full military police presence. I want my CAC card retrieved from the scene. Send a secondary unit to lock down that intersection if you have to. And Desmond, make sure they understand they are not coming to negotiate my bail. They are coming to extract a detained flag officer from hostile custody. Understood, General. ETA is 25 minutes. Do not say another word to these people. We have the watch. The line went dead. Serena hung up the heavy receiver. The metallic clack echoed loudly in the booking area. She turned around slowly, her face an unreadable mask of stone. Done playing pretend? Harlan sneered, stepping forward to grab her arm again. Come on, Cell 3 is waiting for you. Serena did not resist. She allowed Harlan to lead her down a narrow, brightly lit corridor lined with barred doors. He opened the heavy iron door of Cell 3, a barren concrete box containing a single steel bench and a stainless steel toilet. Get comfortable, Harlan said, shoving her inside and slamming the heavy door shut. The mechanical lock engaged with a deafening final clatter. You will be seeing the magistrate in the morning. Hope you like bologna sandwiches. Serena Hale did not sit down. She walked to the center of the cell, crossed her arms over her chest to preserve her body heat in her wet clothes, and stood perfectly straight. She looked through the thick iron bars, staring straight past Harlan, straight through the concrete walls of the precinct. She was waiting for the thunder. Miles away, the sleeping giant of the United States military violently awoke. Inside the Pentagon's underground parking garage, tires squealed against painted concrete as three black, up-armored Chevrolet Suburbans bearing government plates tore out of the facility. Inside the lead vehicle, Colonel Desmond Langford sat in the passenger seat, his face illuminated by the glow of his encrypted tablet. Beside him, driving with white-knuckled intensity, was a special agent from the Army Criminal Investigation Division. In the rear seats sat two heavily armed military police officers in full tactical gear. Status on the general's DOD card, Langford barked into his headset. Secondary CID unit is at the coordinates provided, a voice crackled back over the comms. They found it, Colonel. It was kicked into a storm drain grating, muddy but intact. They are bagging it as federal evidence. Good, Langford growled. Contact the Oak Haven chief of police. Wake him up. Tell him if he is not at his precinct in 15 minutes, the United States Army is going to declare his building a hostile zone. Meanwhile, back at the Oak Haven precinct, the atmosphere was blissfully, tragically ignorant. Bryce Harlan was sitting at his desk, his boots propped up next to his keyboard, pecking at his incident report with 2 fingers. He was actively embellishing the narrative, adding words like aggressive stance and verbally threatening to justify the bruises he knew he had left on Serena's wrists. Across the room, Officer Kyle Reed, a rookie fresh out of the academy, was standing by the live scan machine. Sergeant Voss had told him to finish processing the suspect's fingerprints while Harlan wrote his fiction. Reed placed Serena's fingerprints, which Harlan had forcibly rolled onto the digital scanner earlier, into the AFIS, Automated Fingerprint Identification System. He clicked Submit and waited for the system to bounce back any warrants or criminal history. Usually, the system took a few minutes to search the local and state databases, but tonight the response was instantaneous. The screen flashed a blinding, violent red. A high-pitched alarm began to shriek from the terminal, a sound Reed had never heard in his short time on the force. Alert! Do not detain. Federal override. Identity: Hale, Serena M. Rank: Major General, United States Army. Clearance: Top Secret SCI. Warning: unlawful detention of this individual violates USC Title 18. Contact Department of Defense immediately. Reed felt all the blood drain from his face. His knees suddenly felt weak. He stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing silently like a fish out of water. Hey, turn that damn alarm off, Sergeant Voss yelled from the booking desk, spilling a drop of coffee onto his uniform. What did you do, Reed? Sarge, Reed stammered, his voice trembling so violently he could barely form the words. He pointed a shaky finger at the monitor. Sarge, you need to look at this right now. Voss rolled his eyes, pushing his heavy chair back and lumbering over to the live scan terminal. What? Did she have an outstanding warrant for unpaid parking tickets or something? Voss's voice died in his throat, his eyes locked onto the glowing red text. Major General. Top secret. A cold sweat immediately broke out across Voss's forehead. The coffee cup in his hand began to tremble. He looked slowly toward the corridor leading to the holding cells. Harlan! Voss roared, his voice cracking with absolute terror. Harlan, get over here right now! Bryce Harlan looked up from his computer, annoyed. What is the problem, Sarge? I am almost done with the report. Before Harlan could stand up, the heavy reinforced glass doors of the precinct's main entrance violently blew open. The heavy reinforced glass double doors of the Oak Haven County precinct did not just open. They were violently thrown wide, slamming against their metal hinges with a deafening crash that echoed like a gunshot through the bullpen. The relentless Virginia rain blew into the lobby, carrying with it the unmistakable, heavy-treaded footsteps of the United States military. 6 figures stormed into the room, moving with a terrifying synchronized precision that instantly paralyzed every local police officer in the building. In the lead was Colonel Desmond Langford, his dress uniform immaculate despite the weather, his face a chiseled mask of absolute fury. Flanking him was Special Agent Vance of the Army Criminal Investigation Division, wearing a dark windbreaker with bold reflective gold letters reading Federal Agent. Behind them were 4 heavily armed military police officers in full tactical gear. Rain dripped from their Kevlar helmets and the barrels of their slung M4 carbines. They did not draw their weapons. They did not need to. Their sheer presence, their disciplined, predatory stances, instantly asserted absolute dominance over the room. Lock down the exits, Colonel Langford ordered, his voice carrying the deep, resonant boom of a man accustomed to commanding battlefields. Nobody leaves this facility. 2 of the MPs instantly broke off, taking up rigid, imposing positions blocking the main entrance. The other 2 fanned out, their hands resting cautiously on their tactical belts, their eyes scanning the room, assessing every local cop as a potential hostile. Sergeant Harlan Voss remained frozen behind the booking desk, the red alert still screaming from the live scan terminal behind him. His mouth hung open. The coffee cup in his hand had tilted, spilling lukewarm liquid over his fingers and onto the floor, but he did not even notice. Officer Bryce Harlan, however, still had not fully grasped the reality of the situation. His arrogance was a shield that blinded him to his own impending destruction. He pushed back from his desk, his hand instinctively dropping toward his duty belt as he stood up. Hey! Who the hell do you think you are? Harlan barked, trying to inject his usual bullying authority into his voice. You cannot just barge into my precinct. This is county jurisdiction. Special Agent Vance closed the distance between them in 3 massive strides. Before Harlan could even unclip his holster, Vance was in his face, standing inches away, radiating a cold, lethal intensity. Take your hand off your belt, officer, Vance said quietly. It was not a shout. It was a promise of immediate, devastating violence if Harlan disobeyed. Move your hand 1 more millimeter toward that firearm, and I will consider it a threat against a federal agent and a commissioned officer of the United States Army. Do you understand me? Harlan swallowed hard. The bravado suddenly drained from his face as he looked into Vance's eyes, realizing he was entirely outmatched. Slowly, deliberately, Harlan raised both his hands, stepping back from his desk. That is what I thought, Vance snapped. Colonel Langford marched directly to the elevated booking desk. He did not look at Harlan. He did not look at the rookie Reed, who was currently hyperventilating near the fingerprint machine. He locked eyes with Sergeant Voss. I am Colonel Desmond Langford, Chief of Staff to Major General Serena Hale, Langford said, his voice deadly quiet. I am accompanied by federal agents from the Department of the Army CID. You are currently holding a 2-star general in your cells. I want her released into my custody right now. Voss stammered, wiping the spilled coffee from his trembling hand onto his pants. Okay, Colonel, sir. I swear to God I did not know. The arresting officer brought her in as a Jane Doe. He said her military ID was a fake. Did you run the DOD identification number to verify its authenticity? Langford interrupted, his eyes narrowing into dangerous slits. No, no, sir. Harlan said it was fake, so we. You took the word of a single patrol officer and bypassed standard federal verification protocols to incarcerate a flag officer. Langford's voice grew louder, the sheer incompetence infuriating him almost as much as the disrespect. Under Title 18, United States Code Section 111, the assault and unlawful detention of a federal officer is a federal felony. Every second she remains in that cell, you are compounding your own criminal liability. Voss frantically grabbed the heavy ring of cell keys from his desk. His hands were shaking so violently they jingled like wind chimes. Right away, Colonel, right away. Cell 3 down the hall. Lead the way, Langford commanded. Agent Vance, secure the arresting officer. Do not let him out of your sight. Yes, Colonel, Vance replied, turning his terrifying gaze fully onto Bryce Harlan. Harlan was suddenly looking very pale, his eyes darting toward the screaming live scan monitor, finally connecting the dots. As Langford and two MPs followed Voss down the harsh, fluorescent-lit corridor toward the holding cells, the precinct fell into a dead, terrified silence. The only sound was the heavy, rhythmic thud of combat boots against the linoleum floor. The corridor leading to the holding cell smelled strongly of bleach and old despair. Sergeant Voss practically jogged ahead, his heavy breath rasping in his chest, terrified of the men marching behind him. He reached the heavy iron door of cell 3 and fumbled with the keys. It took him 3 agonizing tries to fit the large brass key into the mechanical lock. With a loud clack, the deadbolt retracted. Voss pulled the heavy door open and immediately stepped back, pressing his large body flat against the cinder block wall to get out of the military's way. Colonel Langford stepped into the doorway and stopped. The holding cell was small, barren, and freezing. The concrete floor was stained, but in the direct center of the cell stood Major General Serena Hale. She was exactly as Harlan had left her, arms crossed over her chest to preserve heat, her damp white blouse clinging to her skin, her posture perfectly rigid. She had not paced, she had not sat on the filthy steel bench. She had simply waited. Upon seeing her, Colonel Langford immediately snapped to attention, his heels clicking together. The 2 military police officers behind him did the exact same, their hands snapping up in crisp, razor-sharp salutes. General, Langford said, his voice thick with an emotion he fought hard to suppress. Seeing his commander, a woman who had earned 2 silver stars and led thousands of troops locked in a county cage, was a profound insult to everything he held sacred. Serena slowly uncrossed her arms, her face softened just a fraction as she looked at her chief of staff. She returned the salute with a steady, practiced motion. At ease, Colonel, Serena said quietly. Her voice was slightly hoarse from the cold, but her authority remained absolute. It took you exactly the right amount of time. You are losing your edge, Desmond. It was a dark, dry joke, a testament to her unbreakable composure. A microscopic smile touched Langford's lips before vanishing. Traffic on Route 1, ma'am, Langford replied, stepping fully into the cell. He quickly removed his heavy, dry uniform jacket and draped it over Serena's trembling shoulders. The warmth of the thick wool was immediate and comforting. Thank you, Desmond, she murmured, pulling the jacket tight. Are you injured, General? Langford asked, his eyes scanning her face, then dropping to her hands. Serena did not answer verbally. She simply held out her wrists into the harsh light of the corridor. Langford stepped closer. The 2 MPs leaned in. Sergeant Voss, still plastered against the wall, craned his neck to look. What they saw made the blood freeze in their veins. Deep, dark purple trenches had been violently carved into the delicate skin of her wrists. The friction burns were raw, red, and actively swelling. It was clear evidence of malicious excessive force. Handcuffs ratcheted down with the explicit intent to cause maximum pain. Langford's face turned into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He slowly turned his head to look at Sergeant Voss. The look in the colonel's eyes was so terrifying that Voss actually whimpered, raising his hands in a defensive gesture. I did not do it, Voss squeaked, pointing frantically down the hall toward the bullpen. It was Harlan. Officer Harlan brought her in like that, I swear on my life. General, Langford said, his voice shaking with the effort of holding back his wrath. I have a medical evacuation chopper on standby at the local high school football field. We can have you at Walter Reed Medical Center in minutes. Cancel the medevac, Desmond, Serena replied firmly. They are superficial contusions. I will have the base doctor document them for the federal prosecutor's file when we return. Right now, I want my property back, and I want to speak to the arresting officer. Mom, CID is currently securing him, Langford warned. You do not need to subject yourself to— I am not subjecting myself to anything, Colonel, Serena interrupted, her eyes hardening into the icy glare that terrified generals and politicians alike. I'm going to look that man in the eye before I dismantle his life. She stepped out of the holding cell. The MPs instantly fell into formation behind her, acting as her personal security detail. As she walked down the corridor back toward the booking area, she looked exactly like what she was, a conquering general returning to the battlefield to accept the unconditional surrender of her enemies. When she re-entered the bullpen, the atmosphere was suffocating. Every local officer was standing frozen. Special Agent Vance had Bryce Harlan cornered near a desk. Harlan was pale, sweating profusely, his earlier arrogance entirely eviscerated. Serena stopped in the center of the room. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The silence in the room was so absolute that a pin drop would have sounded like an explosion. Officer Harlan, Serena said softly. Harlan flinched at the sound of his own name. He slowly looked up, his eyes meeting hers. He was finally seeing her. Not the caricature his prejudice had painted, but the terrifying reality of the woman he had assaulted. He saw the stars in Langford's eyes. He saw the federal agents. He realized with a sickening drop in his stomach that he had ended his own life that night. Before Harlan could formulate an apology, the glass double doors of the precinct hissed open once more. A man in a crumpled suit, his tie half undone, rushed into the room panting heavily. It was Robert Slade, the chief of police for Oak Haven County. He had been ripped from his bed by a phone call from the Pentagon duty officer informing him that his precinct was currently under federal occupation. Chief Slade took one look at the heavily armed MPS, the federal agents, and the black woman wearing a colonel's jacket standing in the center of the room. "Oh my God," Chief Slade whispered, the color completely draining from his face. Chief Slade scrambled forward, practically tripping over his own feet in his desperation to reach Serena. He bypassed his own officers, ignoring Sergeant Voss entirely, and stopped a respectable 5 feet away from the general out of fear of the MPs who immediately placed their hands on their weapons as he approached. "General Hale," Chief Slade gasped out of breath, his face slick with anxious sweat. "I cannot begin to express the profound apologies of the Oak Haven County Police Department. This is a catastrophic failure of procedure. I am so sorry." Serena looked at the chief with cold, unwavering eyes. She did not offer her hand. She did not accept his apology. "Chief Slade," Serena said, her voice echoing in the dead silent room, "your apologies are irrelevant to me. You have an institutional cancer within your department, and tonight it metastasized." She turned her gaze toward the booking desk. "Sergeant, my property." Voss nearly tripped over himself, grabbing the plastic property bin. He slid it across the counter. Colonel Langford stepped forward, intercepted the bin, and personally handed Serena her items. With quiet dignity, she slipped her gold wedding band back onto her bruised finger. She put on her West Point class ring. She folded the damp blazer over her arm. Just then, the front doors opened again. Another CID agent walked in, carrying a clear plastic federal evidence bag. Inside the bag, caked in wet Virginia mud but entirely legible, was Serena's green-striped Department of Defense Common Access card. The agent handed the bag to Special Agent Vance, who held it up for Chief Slade to see. "Your Officer Bryce Harlan," Vance stated loudly, ensuring every person in the room heard him, "confiscated this official United States government identification card from Major General Hale. He accused her of forgery. He then maliciously discarded federal property onto the wet asphalt, where he subsequently kicked it into a municipal storm drain to conceal it." Chief Slade closed his eyes, a look of absolute agony crossing his face. He turned slowly to look at Harlan. Harlan was trembling now. "Chief, listen to me," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "She was acting suspiciously. She would not cooperate. It was a dark road. I did not know." "Shut your mouth, Harlan," Chief Slade roared, his voice cracking with panic and fury. He turned back to Serena. "General, I assure you, Officer Harlan will be suspended immediately, pending a full internal affairs investigation. Serena let out a short, humorless laugh. It was a sound devoid of any warmth. You misunderstand the situation, Chief, Serena said, taking a step forward. The MPs moved with her, a synchronized wall of intimidation. There will be no internal affairs investigation. Your department no longer possesses jurisdiction over this matter. She turned her attention entirely to Bryce Harlan. He shrank back against the desk, terrified. Officer Harlan, Serena began, her tone surgical and precise. You saw a black woman driving a luxury vehicle, and your prejudice made a calculation. When presented with official military identification, your ego refused to accept that I could hold a position of authority over you, so you chose violence. She raised her bruised wrists, ensuring everyone in the room saw the angry purple welts. This is not a mistake. This is a federal crime, Serena continued, her voice rising in power and projection until it filled every corner of the room. You assaulted a 2-star general of the United States Armed Forces. You unlawfully detained me. You stole and discarded federal property. And under the posse comitatus, exceptions for federal property crimes, the United States Army CID has absolute jurisdiction over your actions tonight. She turned to Special Agent Vance. Agent Vance, execute your duties. With pleasure, General, Vance said. He stepped forward and grabbed Harlan roughly by the shoulder, spinning him around and slamming him chest first into his own desk. The sheer irony of the motion was lost on no one. Bryce Harlan, Vance barked, pulling a pair of heavy federal handcuffs from his belt. You are under arrest for violation of Title 18, United States Code Section 111, assaulting a federal officer. You are also being charged with deprivation of rights under color of law and theft of government property. Chief, you cannot let them do this. You have to protect me, Harlan screamed, thrashing against the desk as Vance wrenched his arms behind his back. You are on your own, Bryce, Chief Slade whispered, turning his back on the disgraced officer. Strip his badge and his weapon, Sergeant. He does not work here anymore. As the harsh steel of the federal handcuffs clicked violently around Harlan's wrists, the finality of the sound echoed through the precinct. He was crying now, the arrogant bully reduced to a sobbing, pathetic mess, as the realization of federal prison suddenly loomed before him. Serena did not smile. There was no joy in this, only the grim satisfaction of neutralizing a threat to the public. Colonel Langford, Serena said, turning toward the exit. Yes, General. I am tired and I am cold. Take me home right away. As Major General Serena Hale walked out of the Oak Haven County Police Department, flanked by heavily armed military police, the sea of local cops parted for her. She walked out into the cold Virginia rain, leaving a career completely destroyed in her wake, while Bryce Harlan was dragged kicking and screaming toward the very same concrete cell he had thrown her into just an hour before. But the nightmare for Harlan and the entire corrupt precinct was only just beginning. And that is the absolute definition of instant, devastating karma. Officer Bryce Harlan let his unchecked ego and toxic prejudice blind him, and it cost him his badge, his freedom, and years in a federal penitentiary. Major General Serena Hale proved that true power does not need to shout or throw punches. It simply stands tall, follows protocol, and lets the weight of justice crush the corrupt. Her single phone call did not just save herself. It exposed and dismantled an entire corrupt police precinct, making the streets safer for everyone. This story is not just about getting even. It is about dignity. It is about the importance of standing up for your rights and looking out for the vulnerable people in our society. Serena turned her trauma into a shield for others, and that is the ultimate victory. What would you have done if you were in Serena's shoes? Would you have kept your cool like she did? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. Do not forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a dose of instant karma. Share this video with someone who needs to see justice served today. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and remember, be kind to everyone because you never know who their daughter might be. See you in the next one.